Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Krishna Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Balaram Jai Krishna Balaram Jai Krishna Balaram Jai Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radha Ki Jai. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you, everybody in Cyberland or wherever you are. Hare Krishna, thank you for coming. The subject matter is wonderful. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada Ki Jai. Now, I'm just taking over for the Daiva Shakti, and she said she did 17. Do you know, does this look familiar? Yes. Okay, it does look familiar? Would it be this one then, this next one? Okay, I'll just start with here. The two latecomers came walking up to Swami Ji, who was seated like a father of a family at the head of a picnic table. Keith was serving from a big wok into individual plates. This was like Brahmananda and I think a few people piled into a car and raced there late. And so they're catching up to Srila Prabhupada, and there's prasadam. You know, they're coming very late to the program. But someone finally showed up with the car, so they were excited to join, and so they came at the last minute. So Keith served them. Prabhupada took Steve's chapati and heaped it up with a mound of sugar, and Steve munched on the bread and sugar. Prabhupada began talking somehow about lion tamers. And he recalled that once at a fair he had seen a man wrestling with a tiger, rolling over and over with it down a hill. The boys, who rarely heard Swamiji speak anything but philosophy, were surprised. They were delighted, city kids, taken to the country by their guru and having a good time. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Steve was walking, and Steve says, I was walking with Swamiji across a long, gentle slope. I wanted him to see and approve a picture of Radha Krishna I had found in a small book, the Narada-bhakti Sutra. I had planned to get a color reproduction of it to give to each of his followers. So as we were walking across the grass, I showed him the picture and asked him whether it was a nice picture of Radha Krishna for reproducing. He looked at the picture, smiled, nodded, and said, yes. Bruce said, I walked with Swamiji around the grounds. All the others were doing something else, and Swamiji and myself were walking alone. He was talking about building a temple there. And I just was remembering a particular pastime with Srila Prabhupada in Hyderabad. And there were quite a few of his disciples there, and they ate so much. They were at a life member's house, and they were eating a lot, many puris, many fried foods. And Shrutakirti put his hand on his stomach and said, I'm not feeling very well. And Srila Prabhupada said, well, you ate 10 puris. And then Prabhupada mentioned how many puris each one of his disciples ate. None of them even knew how many puris they had eaten. But Prabhupada, so vigilant, so aware, conscious, on every level, spiritual, on every level. He could tell you what each and every single person was doing, and you yourself wouldn't even remember what you did. That was our Guru Maharaj. She was so aware of everything. He said, of course you're not feeling well. You ate too many puris. So Srila Prabhupada, while he liked to feed us, he also as a pharmacist, he understood medicine. And when I would cook for Prabhupada when he wasn't feeling well, he would eat boiled Karela at the beginning of his meal. He ate Karela every day at the beginning of his noon meal, but on days he wasn't feeling well, it was boiled. So he knew the art of adjustment depending upon what season it was, how his health was feeling. Very, very scientific He would say things like, if you want to be healthy, he would say, if you want to be a grihasta, you drink while you eat. If you want to be a sannyasi, you drink before you eat. If you want to be a rogi, a bogey, or sick, you drink after you eat. Or he would say, you eat like a prince at breakfast, a king at lunch, and a pauper at dinner. So he taught us, the one thing about Srila Prabhupada, he didn't teach us, he taught us even a lifestyle. He taught us how to live a sattvic lifestyle. We didn't know. He taught us how to be suchi. He taught us how to brush our teeth with a twig. He said, if you brush your teeth with a twig, you'll never go to the dentist, because the chlorophyll will coat all your teeth. He taught us each and every little detail about health and how to live in a beautiful way. And it was all part of a Krishna conscious science. And he told us, though, sometimes he would admonish us for being too inventive. One time we were, it was right when he had taught us about Tulsi, to do Tulsi Artik. It was at the very, in 1970. And Gorsindar, who he had built 3 altars in the backyard where the Tulsi plants were, and we would do our Artik in the backyard. And he started a new program where we would offer sparklers in the place of the ghee lamp. Sparklers, mind you, they're like sticks that shoot out all these sparkles in every direction, and they use it during New Year's and 4th of July, all kinds of like big celebrations where they blast off beautiful fireworks. Children play with sparklers, and it's like a children's toy. And so we were offering sparklers to Tulsi in the place of the ghee lamp. And then when Srila Prabhupada saw this, he said, oh, nonsense, you're always inventing something. Please just offer the ghee lamp. There's something more to offering the ghee of mother cow, offering that lamp to Tulsi Devi. That's very special. So we were just like children, and Srila Prabhupada was our father, and he taught us each and every little thing about how to live a Krishna conscious life, how to chant properly, how to pronounce words, everything. So Bruce walked with Swamiji around the grounds, and all the others were doing something else, and Swamiji and myself were walking alone. He was talking about building a temple there. In 1967, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami translated and wrote purports for 13 of the 84 aphorisms. Srila Prabhupada called them codes of the Narada-bhakti Sutra. In 1989, at their annual meeting, the governing body commission of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, suggested that I complete this book. I was pleased to accept the assignment especially because of my involvement with Srila Prabhupada's initial writings of the Narada-bhakti Sutra. I was part of the small group of seekers who joined Srila Prabhupada in the latter part of 1966 at his storefront temple at 26 2nd Avenue in New York City. At one point, we began passing around a Gita Press edition of Narada's Philosophy of Love, Narada-bhakti Sutra. Some of us were attracted to the nectar and simplicity of the aphorisms. It was hard to break our attachment to some of these books, but we always did so once Srila Prabhupada explained that a particular book or guru was not bona fide. Prabhupada was really gentle about it all, gentle about attracting us and guiding us to focusing on our minds and explaining how when the Krishna consciousness was coming from the lips of a pure devotee, they can penetrate deeply into the heart of a person, and like it when we got the first chapter of was a second canto. It was one of the chapters, and it was Lord in the Heart. And it was just a book that was the chapter. And there was a picture of Paramatma, the Lord in the Heart, all shining and glorious. And he would explain how that the words of the pure devotee will touch the heart of each person. So we became more and more desirous of focusing only on hearing Srila Prabhupada's words. We ourselves threw away all our books upon coming to Krishna consciousness, and some of us really liked books. But we got rid of them all and just kept Prabhupada's books and focused. It was such a unique time. None of us knew any news that was going on in the world. Not a thing did we know one bit of news. None of us had a device that was telling us news. None of us looked at the newspaper. None of us knew. When there was huge things going on in the world, we were just quietly, happily, only absorbed 100% in nothing but Prabhupada's words. It was a really beautiful time, actually. If for some reason all our devices just disappeared, we wouldn't even know what time it was now, because they are our watches also. I'm looking at this as the watch. We've become so dependent on our devices. But in those days, we didn't have any distraction, not one distraction. We wouldn't even listen to a word on the radio, nothing that wasn't Prabhupada. And so it was a very special time. We were protected from all forms of Maya. Right now, Maya's at our fingertips. Right there, at any moment, we can be in intense Maya, secret Maya, like Prabhupada said. Cheaters, what are they doing? They're drinking water underwater on a fast day. You can look this way, look that way. But he said monkeys are also sannyasis, but look what they're doing. They have so many connections. So Prabhupada taught us how to really break the attachment to Maya. It's like Maya has teeth. And Srila Prabhupada taught us how to break the teeth. When Maya grabs you, no, we just concentrate on Prabhupada and Krishna. And our edition of the Narada-bhakti Sutra was a beautiful color illustration of Sri Radha and Krishna. They looked young, about 8 years old, and stood gracefully by the edge of the Jamuna River with the cow behind them. I took the illustration to a photography shop and had a dozen color copies made. With Srila Prabhupada's approval, I gave a photo to each of his initiated disciples. It became like an ISKCON membership photo and was used by devotees on their personal altars. Prabhupada walked across the scenic acreage, looked at the distant mountains and forests, and Keith walked beside him. Prabhupada spoke of how Dr. Misra had offered him the island in the middle of the ashram's lake to build a temple on. "What kind of temple were you thinking of?" Keith asked. "How big?" Prabhupada smiled and gestured across the horizon, as big as the whole horizon. Keith laughed. "Yes," Prabhupada replied. A few Ananda ashram men and women came by. One woman wearing a sari was wearing a sari. Prabhupada turned to the other woman and said, "A woman who wears a sari looks very feminine." It was late afternoon when some of Swamiji's followers, and by the way, Prabhupada taught us how to put on a sari, if you can imagine, because we had nobody to teach us how to put on a sari. So Srila Prabhupada would even do that for his disciples, show exactly how to do. It was late afternoon when some of Swamiji's followers gathered by the lake and began talking candidly about Swamiji and speculating about his relationship to God and their relationship to him. "Well," said Wali, "Swami never claimed to be God or an incarnation, but he said that he is a servant of God, teaching love of God. But he says that the spiritual master is non-different from God," said Howard. They stood at the edge of the mirrory, calm lake and concluded that it was not necessary to talk about this. The answers would be revealed later. None of them really had much spiritual knowledge, but they wanted their faith to deepen. Afterward, Keith, Wally, and Howard wandered into the meditation room. There was a seat with a picture of Dr. Misra, who was away in Europe. But the most remarkable thing was a blinking strobe light. I feel like I'm in a head shop on St. Mark's Place, said Wally. What kind of spiritual meditation is this? Howard asked. A Misra follower wearing a white kurta and white bell-bottoms replied that their guru had said that they could sit and meditate on this light. Swamiji says, "You should meditate on Krishna," said Keith. After sunset, everyone gathered in the large room of the main building to watch a slideshow. It was a loose collection, mostly of assorted slides of India and the Ananda Ashram. A record by a popular Indian sitarist was playing in the background. Some of the slides were of Vishnu temples, and when one slide passed by very quickly, Prabhupada asked, "Let me see that. Can you go back? Let me see that temple again." This happened several times when he recognized familiar temples in India. Later in the show, there were several slides of a girl, one of the members of Dr. Misra's ashram, demonstrating Indian dance poses. As one of her pictures passed, an ashram man joked, "Turn back and let me see that temple again." The joke seemed at Swamiji's expense, and in poor taste, his followers didn't laugh. Then came Swamiji's lecture. He sat up cross-legged on the couch in the largest room in the mansion. The room was filled with people, the Swami's followers from the Lower East Side, as well as the Ananda Ashram yogis sitting on the floor or standing along the walls in the doorway. He began his talk by criticizing democracy. He called it demon crazy. He said that because people are attracted to sense gratification, they vote for a leader who will fulfill their own lust and greed, and that is their only criterion for picking a leader. He went on for 45 minutes to explain about the importance of Krishna consciousness, his reel-to-reel tape recorder moving silently. Then he led a kirtan that bridged all differences and brought out the best in everyone that night. Several nights before, in his apartment on 2nd Avenue, Prabhupada had taught his followers how to dance. They had formed a line behind him while he demonstrated the simple step. We called it the Swami step. Holding his arms above his head, he would first swing his left foot forward across the right foot and then bring it back again in a sweeping motion. Very graceful. Then he would swing his right foot over the left and bring it back again. With his arms upraised, Prabhupada would walk forward, swinging his body from side to side. Left foot to right foot to left side. In time, with the 1-2-3 rhythm, he had shown them the step in regular time and in slow half-time rhythm. Keith had called it the Swami step, as if it were a new ballroom dance step. That's so cute. Prabhupada's followers began dancing, and soon the others joined. And soon the others joined them, moving around the room in a rhythmic circle of ecstasy, dancing and swaying, sometimes leaping and whirling. It was a joyous hour-long kirtan, the Swami encouraging everyone to the fullest extent. A visitor to the ashram happened to have his stringed bass with him, and he began expertly turning out his own swinging bass improvisations beneath Swami's melody, while another man played the tablas. The Ananda Ashram members had been divided of late into two tense, standoffish groups. There was an elderly crowd similar to the old ladies who had attended the Swami's uptown lectures, and there was a young crowd, mostly hip couples. And in the kirtan, their riffs were forgotten, as they discovered later, even healed. The rifts between the two opposing groups. Whether they liked it or not, almost all of those present were induced to rise and dance. And we see that in the marketplace of the holy name. Doesn't matter where if you come from this mat, that mat, the other mat, this guru, that guru, all differences are resolved in Harinam Sankirtan. When we're all singing and dancing, there can be no difficulty. No, we're not disputing a philosophical point. We're simply engaged in full ecstatic Krishna consciousness. So I think the solution to everything is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Everything, I mean, when we're induced to rise and dance, it doesn't matter. All these differences that might be dividing, they're no longer there. Then it was late. The Swami took rest in the guest room, and his boys slept outside in their sleeping bags. Howard, I awakened 3 or 4 times, and each time I am flat on my back looking up at the stars, which are always in different positions. My sense of time is confused. The sidereal shifts dizzy me. Then just before morning I dream. I dream of devotees clustered about a beautiful golden youth. To see him is to be captivated. His transcendental body radiates an absolute beauty unseen in the world. Stunned, I inquire, who is he? Don't you know, someone says? That's the Swami. I look carefully but see no resemblance. The youth appears around 18, straight out of Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. If that's a Swami, I wonder to myself, why doesn't he come to earth like that? A voice somewhere inside me answers, people would follow me for my beauty, not for my teachings. And I awake startled. The dream is clear in my mind, more like a vision than a dream. I feel strangely refreshed, bathed in some unknown balm. Again, I see that the constellations have shifted and that the dimmer stars have faded into the encroaching dawn. I remember Swamiji telling me that although most dreams are simply functions of the mind, dreams of the spiritual master are of spiritual significance. And I was, at one point I was in a gathering, it was Prabhupada, there's a festival in LA, it's Prabhupada reunion that happens every year, and there was a devotee there, and they were sharing they had various dreams of Srila Prabhupada. And later on, just not that long after that festival where a person was sharing their dreams, because I had also had a dream early after reading teachings of Lord Chaitanya in 1969, that Prabhupada was my spiritual master, but I really didn't talk about it because I didn't want people to think I was strange, that I dreamed that, But I read in the scriptures that ordinary devotees have dreams of Guru and Gauranga. They have dreams of Krishna. They have dreams of their spiritual master. Ordinary. So all of a sudden I relaxed a little, like, okay, that this is ordinary. This is normal. It's not an extraordinary situation. The Lord can lift the veils. There can be these, and sometimes in the very beginning of our Krishna consciousness, or when we're being reawakened to our dormant Krishna consciousness that may be slumbering there within the chaos of our lives, we get like an amazing glimpse. We get something that's much bigger, and it motivates us for more. It's like Maharaj Pariksit. When Krishna appeared in the womb and protected him from the Brahmastra, his whole life was spent. His whole life was spent examining, looking, where is Krishna? Everywhere looking, where is Krishna? There was nothing more for him than, where can I find Krishna? So when we get these experiences, they fuel they inspire us to go further in our Krishna consciousness. If that's okay, so then we have here, Keith also had a dream that night. Keith, I saw Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna was inquiring from Krishna, and Krishna was reciting the Bhagavad-Gita to him. Then that picture phased out and the images changed, and there was Swamiji, and I was kneeling in front of him. The same dialogue was going on. I had the understanding that now is the time, and Swamiji is presenting the same thing as Krishna, and we were all in the position of Arjuna. The dream made it very clear that hearing from Swamiji was as good as hearing from Krishna. That's very beautiful. The sun rose over the mountains, streaking the morning sun above the lake with colors. Wally and Keith were walking around the grounds saying to Prabhupada, how beautiful it all was. We are not so concerned about beautiful scenery, said Prabhupada. We are concerned with the beautiful one who has made the beautiful scenery. Later, Prabhupada sat next to Bruce in the Volkswagen returning to the city. The car went winding around on a ribbon of a smooth black mountain road with lush green forests close in and intermittent vistas of mountains and expansive sky. It was a rare occasion for Bruce to be driving Prabhupada in a car because none of Swami's boys had cars. They would always travel by bus or subway. In New York, that is to have a car. I mean, it's like to have a place to keep your car, it's like paying a big rent, gigantic rent just to keep a car. So very few people, unless they're very, very wealthy, keep a car in New York because you can easily catch something very quickly to get where you're going. It seems fitting for the Swami to have a car to ride in, but this was only a little Volkswagen, and Bruce winced whenever they hit a bump and it jostled Prabhupada. As they wound their way on through the mountains, Bruce recalled something he had read in a book by Aldous Huxley's wife about the best places for meditation. One opinion had been that the best place to meditate was on a large body of water because of the negative ions in the water. The other opinion was that it was better to meditate in the mountains because if you're higher up and closer to God, not taking into consideration the Lord is in everyone's heart. Bruce asked Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada replied, "This is nonsense. There is no question of better place. Are you thinking that God is up on some planet or something? You have got to go up high? No, you can meditate anywhere. Just chant Hare Krishna." He made it simple for us. We didn't have to climb to the top of the Himalayas. I heard here in class today, Panchagoda was talking about Kumbh Mela, someone asked, and of course we're going. And we were there with Prabhupada too. And Prabhupada told 10 years before that Kumbh Mela that he took us to in 77, he told about this special Kumbh Mela, that he would take us to it. He was explaining it all to Govindadasi. So Prabhupada went, we brought a bucket of water to him, and he took bath at the camp at the right time. It was 11:27 to be exact. I remember that very carefully. But these festivals, he said that all the saintly people from all over the universe would attend. They come. And when you think about what is the Yuga Dharma, the first word of it is congregational chanting. Congregational chanting means there's a gigantic congregation of devotees all singing the names of God, all vibrating. They're all coming together at a confluence of sacred rivers. That's also confluence, congregation. It's coming together. It's uniting in the name of God. When we unite, all of us unite in the name of God. Wow. And this, someone was telling that they're predicting 400 million through the course of the month. That's bigger than the entire population of the United States. Think of it. all chanting the names of God. Hare Krishna. That's amazing, really amazing. For some time, the drive became tiring for Prabhupada, and he dozed, his head resting forward. Bruce walked with Swamiji up to his apartment, opening the door for him, adjusting the window as he liked, and preparing things in his room as if he were Swami's personal servant. Prabhupada settled back into a Second Avenue apartment, feeling pleased with the visit to Ananda Ashram. The kirtan had been successful, and one of Dr. Misra's foremost students had commented that he was impressed by Prabhupada's followers. Simply by chanting, they seemed to be achieving an advanced level of yoga discipline, whereas they have more difficulty with all our postures and breath control. United States recently increased involvement in Vietnam was creating an increase of opposition to the war. On July 29th, American planes had bombed North Vietnam's two major population centers, Hanoi and Haiphong, an escalation which brought expressions of regret from several allied countries, including Canada, France, and Japan. United Nations Secretary General U Thant openly criticized America's policy in Vietnam. Further opposition to the war ranged from the U.S. Senate down to newly formed pacifist groups, and dissenters held peace marches, sit-ins, and rallies in protest of the war and draft. We lived in a time where if you were a man and you turned 18, you had to register at the draft board to go into one of the armed forces, whether it was the Navy, Air Force, Army, or the military, the Marines. So you had a choice of 4 places to go. And if you didn't choose, they would just put you somewhere. And that was very frightening. Very, very frightening, because these are not soldiers, they're young boys. And Prabhupada explained to us that when the meat eating is going on and there's a wholesale slaughter of animals, there will have to be war fields somewhere to balance out that violence. It was a very scary time. Okay, we're at the end of this one. Can you help me with this? Because I have to put on the next slideshow. No? There's another slideshow under this. Okay, I'm going to find it. I got it. Hare Krishna. Okay, religious protests was led by Pope Paul the Sixth, and the World Council of Churches decried America's involvement in Vietnam and called for a halt in the fighting as the most effective step towards negotiation. On August 6th, the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, there were demonstrations in many major American cities, including a peace vigil. Uh-oh. Looks to me like it's not quite centered.
Upper right-hand corner.
What?
Yeah, where the arrow that goes both directions, I think. Right-hand corner, yeah.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Okay, including a peace vigil at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The students in so many colleges were protesting, and this was it was a time of great protest. We were protesting the establishment. They were telling us, this is how you need to function. And we were saying, no. So college students everywhere were protesting. Educated, intelligent people were protesting the war. The war was an undignified war. It was not even a declared war. Usually they'll declare war. But something had happened, and it was more subterfuge, and it was much more about resources. Stealing, basically, and sending their young people off to do the dirty work. On August 31st, there would begin another 2-week-long peace vigil before the United Nations General Assembly building, and Mr. Larry Bogart had invited Prabhupada and his followers to open the vigil for praying for peace. Larry Bogart, who worked at the United Nations headquarters, had become friends with the Swami and had volunteered his help for arranging to print stationery for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The letterhead was designed by James Green with a sketch of Radha and Krishna, and Mr. Bogart's name had appeared on the stationery at the head of the list of the ISKCON trustees. Srila Prabhupada, what started to happen is we started to be the opening, we would say an opening prayer or have some opening chant at many different gatherings here and there. In Hawaii, we had what we called the Crater Festival. It was in the huge volcanic crater, the pit inside, and they had days worth of bands playing. And the Hare Krishna devotees we would open the morning festivities by chanting the holy names. And at that time, everybody played some kind of instrument. It was the culture to have what we called jam sessions. Everybody came with an instrument and they all played music. So if you weren't a musician, you took some thing that made a percussion, some noise-making thing. You did something. You had to join in. You had to have some form of instrument. So everybody would come with this, that, and the other. It was like an amazing, disconnected, but very beautiful sound vibrations that would be manifest like this. So the devotees were almost like a new band, a new type of band. Prabhupada accepted Mr. Bogart's invitation to the Peace Vigil. Srila Prabhupada saw it as an opportunity to publicly chant Hare Krishna, so he was glad to attend. He announced to his congregation that Monday, the 31st, instead of the usual morning class at 6:30, everyone should meet at the United Nations headquarters for a special kirtan. This is it. I went to it was the Millennium World Peace Summit at United Nations. ISKCON was there. It was of religious, spiritual leaders in 2000. And it was amazing because up in the top parts, they have people translating into every language. And you have headphones on your, right in front of you, like you would be on an airplane. And you put your headphones and you dial in what language you will understand. And there's somebody up there translating. Whoever's speaking, anyone from any language can hear their translation simultaneously. August 31st, some met at the storefront and went by bus carrying kartals, a tambourine, and the Swami's bongo. Swamiji rode with a few of his followers in a taxi. The typical dress of his followers consisted of well-worn sneakers, black pants or blue jeans and t-shirts, or a button-down sports shirt. Traveling uptown in the early morning put the boys in a light-hearted spirit, and when they saw Swamiji at the United Nations in his flowing saffron robes, they became inspired. Swamiji began chanting, but right away the Peace Vigil organizers stepped in and asked him to stop. This was a silent vigil. They said it should be prayerful, nonviolent silence. The boys were crushed, but Swamiji accepted the restriction and began silently chanting on his beads. Still, Prabhupada is there. Can you imagine? A dignitary stood up before the assembly and made a short speech in which he mentioned Gandhi, and then turned to Prabhupada and indicated that he would now speak about peace. Standing erectly, the UN skyscraper looming behind him, Swamiji spoke in a soft voice. The world must accept that God is the proprietor of everything and the friend of everyone, he said. Only then can we have real peace. Mr. Bogart had scheduled the Swami for 2 hours of silent prayer. Prabhupada had the devotees sit together and softly chant japa until their 2 scheduled hours were up. Then they left. As Prabhupada rode back downtown in the heavy morning traffic, he said, New York reminded him of Calcutta. Amid the start and stop motion and noise of the traffic, he explained, we have nothing to do with peace vigils. We simply want to spread this chanting of Hare Krishna, that's all. If people take to this chanting, peace will automatically come. Then we won't have to artificially try for peace. The New York Post ran a picture of Swamiji's group at the United Nations. I tried to find this. Oh my goodness, I wanted so badly to find this picture. United Nations building, Steve brought the clipping in to Prabhupada. Swamiji, look, they have referred to you here as Sami Krishna. Prabhupada, Sami Krishna, that is all right, that's all right. In the picture, some of the boys were sitting with their heads resting on their arms. Where are you? Prabhupada said. Steve pointed. Oh, you chant like this with your head down. Prabhupada had participated in the peace vigil to oblige his contact, Mr. Bogart. Now Mr. Bogart was phoning to offer his appreciation and agreeing to visit the storefront. He wanted to help, and he would discuss how the Swami would solicit help from important people for his movement of Indian culture and peace. Prabhupada regarded Mr. Bogart's eminent visit as very important and wanted to cook for him personally and receive him in his apartment with the best hospitality. When the day arrived, Prabhupada and Keith cooked together in the small kitchen for several hours, making the best Indian delicacies. Prabhupada posted Stanley downstairs and told him not to allow anyone to come up while he was cooking the feast for Mr. Bogart. Stanley assented, blinking his eyes with his far-off saintly look. I just recently heard about Prabhupada's technique of kachoris, where he double fries them. He'd fry them all up, and then just before, ready to serve, he'd fry them till they're reddish. And that double fry makes them, it's flaky. That double fry trick makes kachoris flaky. After that, my kachoris turned out okay, learning Srila Prabhupada's technique. Stanley stationed himself downstairs in the storefront. A few of the boys were there, and he told them, you can't go up to see Swamiji, no one can. About 12 noon, Larry Bogart arrived, pale, elderly, and well-dressed by Lower East Side standards. He said, I wanted to see Swami Bhaktivedanta. Sorry, Stanley informed him, his boyish face trying to impress the stranger with the seriousness of the order. The Swami is busy now, and he said no one can see him. Mr. Bogart decided he would wait. There was no chair in the storefront, but Stanley brought him a folding chair. It was a hot day. Mr. Bogart looked at his watch several times. A half hour passed. Stanley sat chanting and started staring off blankly. After an hour, Mr. Bogart asked if he could see the Swami now. Stanley assured him that he could not, and Mr. Bogart left in a huff. Oh, what Prabhupada had to endure. Upstairs, Swamiji had become anxious, wondering why Mr. Bogart had not arrived. Finally, he sent Keith downstairs, and Stanley told him about the man whom he had turned away. What? Keith exploded. But that was, within moments, Swamiji heard what had happened. He became furious. He came down to the storefront. You fool, you silly fool. He turned and angrily rebuked everyone in the room, but mostly Stanley. No one had ever seen Swami so angry. Then Swamiji walked away in disgust and returned to his apartment. Stanley was going off the deep end for some time, and now he had become even more abstracted in his behavior. Stanley's mother knew her son had been troubled for years, and she had therefore requested Prabhupada to keep a very close watch on him. And now the boy deteriorated in his responsibilities and stopped cleaning the kitchen and the storefront. He would stand alone, looking at something. He was gloomy, sometimes spoke of suicide, and he stopped chanting regularly. The boys didn't know what to do, but they thought perhaps he should be sent home to his mother. While Srila Prabhupada was in Hawaii, he said, he wrote actually, but he said it also in a lecture. He said, this movement is not for lazies or crazies. Lazies or crazies. When you lose your mind and you what to do, you can become, like Prabhupada said, active ignorant. That's the worst. Inactive ignorant is not as bad, but active ignorant, dreadful. You can cause so much havoc. One day, Stanley went up to see Swami. He came in and he sat down. Prabhupada, yes. Stanley, may I have $50? Prabhupada, why? Prabhupada used to handle all the money himself, so when his boys needed something, even if it were 25 cents for the bus, they had to see Swamiji. He was never wasteful. He was so frugal that whenever he received a letter, he would carefully tear the envelope open and reuse the side as writing paper. So he wanted to know why Stanley wanted $50. Stanley replied in a small voice, I want to purchase some gasoline and set myself on fire. Prabhupada saw Chuck in the doorway and told him to call Bruce at once. Bruce quickly came up and sat with Prabhupada and Stanley. Prabhupada told Bruce, whom he had recently appointed to handle petty cash, to give Stanley $50. And he had Stanley repeat why he wanted the money. Definitely lost his mind. But Swamiji, Bruce protested, we don't have that much money. There you see, Stanley. Prabhupada spoke very calmly. Bruce says we don't have that money. Then he phoned Stanley's mother. Later, Prabhupada said that because Stanley had asked for $50 for gasoline, which only costs 35 cents, he could therefore understand Stanley was crazy. And Srila Prabhupada wrote in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, this is our challenge, crazy men. And then there's laughter. Therefore, we have got a little book, Who is Crazy? Because they're thinking that these shaven-headed boys and girls are crazy, but actually they are crazy. They do not know what is spirit soul. This is the animal consciousness. Yes, it is time, and I'm going to finish now. We have like half a minute. But the problem is that there has been, well, some of the people that came to Prabhupada were not crazy, but extremely unique, not unusual. Like even Kusha. Prabhupada said, can you tolerate? He's a pure devotee. Kusha did so much, but in the beginning, the only thing Kusha would do was chant. That's all. And the temple administrators had the hardest time. Can you imagine? You need so many things done. But this man would only chant. And it would make the temple administrators a little crazy. Like, why? You have to do some service. But he would only chant. And Prabhupada said, can you not tolerate? And when he saw Kusha in Los Angeles, he said, he is a saintly person. So Prabhupada knew when they came to him to say, throw him out, Prabhupada was like, no, he wouldn't let them throw him out. Because Prabhupada saw who was who. And he had so much compassion for all of us. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Hare Krishna.